What's up guys, SuperSaf here, and it's finally time for my top 5 favorite smartphones of 2021. Now last year I did a top 10 and some of you guys did call me out and called it a bit of a cop out. 10 is a lot of smartphones, but there's been so many new devices out last year as well as this year. And I didn't want to just rip off Marquez's format with smartphone awards like pretty much everybody else is doing. So this year I have narrowed it down to just 5, but there will be 2 sections to this video. I'll give you my initial top 5 picks, but then there will be a section where I'll give you all of my honorable mentions for my favorite smartphones which just didn't quite make that list. This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Use the link in the description for a special offer. Now, as always, a few disclaimers. This is my top 5 list. It's of course going to be different to your top 5. That's absolutely fine, guys. We can still be friends. No need to argue. Please drop your favorites down in the comments below. And I've tested a lot of smartphones this year, as you can see, but I've not tested every single one. There's just one of me, guys. I know I'm SuperSaf, but there are so many smartphones that I can personally cover and thoroughly test. So if there are any smartphones that you think should have been on this list, which I haven't tested, then again, drop those in the comments below. Final disclaimer, this list is in no particular order. I'm just gonna be giving you my top 5 picks, but I will reveal my daily drivers of 2021 in the upcoming SuperSaf style collaboration with all of my friends. That's currently in the works and it's gonna be live very soon. So make sure you do subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss it. And with all of that out of the way, let's get to it. So, the first smartphone on my list, once again in no particular order, is a smartphone that I believe was the first to release this year, and it really set a benchmark for every other flagship that came out, and that is the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra. Now, Samsung did a complete redesign for the S21 Ultra, and we've got this very unique looking camera module which melts into the sides. And this is a flagship that ticks off all of the boxes. You've got an excellent display, you've got really good battery life, some of the best cameras out there with the best zoom camera in my opinion, and arguably some of the best video recording on any Android smartphone. Now, this was the first Samsung smartphone that did not ship with a charger out of the box, setting a bit of a trend. And Samsung also got rid of the micro SD card slot, which was something that a lot of people are disappointed about. But nevertheless, this is still an excellent smartphone and it really does compete even a year on. Now, I do have to give some honorable mentions here to the Samsung Galaxy S21 as well as the S21 Plus, which offer a lot of the features that the S21 Ultra does, just not quite there, and they do come in at a lower price compared to the S20 series last year, so some more great options from Samsung. Moving on to the second pick, and I think this one's going to be pretty obvious for a lot of you guys. It is my iPhone of choice, of course, the iPhone 13 Pro Max. Now I'm going to include the iPhone 13 Pro in this as well because it's practically the same smartphone, just smaller with a smaller battery. And although the design is pretty similar to what we had last year, the iPhone 13 Pro Max is an absolute beast. We have a ProMotion 120Hz display this year, very consistent cameras, and in my opinion, the best overall camera package for photos and videos of 2021. And for me, one of the biggest pluses has been the amazing battery life. The iPhone 13 Pro Max, in my opinion, has some of the best battery life on any smartphone this year, and it's my go-to when I'm traveling because I don't have to keep worrying about getting it topped up. Now, of course, there is room for improvement. As much as I like Face ID, in the era of masks, I would have liked to have had Touch ID in addition. And although the notch is smaller compared to what we had last year, it is a lot more intrusive compared to the punch-out design that many of the competitors have opted for. Now, we of course have to give some honorable mentions to the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 13 mini. Arguably, these are incremental updates, but the iPhone 13 mini is still considered the best small smartphone you can buy. And although we don't have the same level of updates that we've got on the iPhone 13 Pro and the iPhone 13 Pro Max, the 13 and 13 mini do have some improved cameras and they are priced lower compared to what we had last year, which will make them the go-to iPhones for most people. Next up on my list is the Google Pixel 6 Pro. Now Google did a complete redesign and I'm a huge fan of the Pixel 6 Pro design. It looks really unique with the visor. It also makes for some really fun thumbnails. We've got some excellent cameras overall. One of my favorite selfie cameras. Yes, some may think that the Google look is a bit overprocessed, but a lot of people do like it. And this is the first smartphone with Google's custom Tensor chipset. That, along with Android 12, gives you some unique features that you're not going to find on any of the smartphones, such as Magic Eraser, as well as some excellent speech to text. Now, having said that, the software has been pretty buggy in my experience, with lots of app crashes, in particular on Google Apps, which is super weird. And although the cameras are generally really good for photos, they're still not up there for video. Having said that, the Pixel 6 Pro does come in at a very competitive price, and overall it's an excellent smartphone. Now, an honorable mention has to go to the Google Pixel 6, which comes in at an even more competitive price, offering a lot of what you have on the Pixel 6 Pro, and it's such an easy smartphone to recommend. Now, before we continue, a quick thanks to our sponsor for this video, NordVPN. Are you tired of your internet service provider and other third parties tracking your every move online? Well, you can easily hide your online data from them all using NordVPN. I've personally been a NordVPN customer for over 4 years, and that's because it's so easy to use and works with all of my devices: Android, iOS, Windows, macOS, and even Linux. With the tap of a button, you can connect to the internet via a remote private server, keeping your data hidden from everyone else. And this also means you can access content and apps that may not be available in your country. There's a holiday season deal on right now, and if you go to nordvpn.com/SuperSaf, you can get a 2-year plan plus 1 additional month with a huge discount. And you have nothing to lose, as NordVPN has a risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee. Right, so we've gone through the top 3, which I'm assuming a lot of you had probably already guessed. But the next 2 were very, very difficult for me to pick. But I've narrowed it down to 2 smartphones which I've really enjoyed using this year. The first might be a bit of a surprise for you guys, and that is the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 3. That's right, the Flip. Now, you guys know I've been a huge fan of foldable smartphones, with the Fold 1 and Fold 2 being some of my favorite smartphones of 2019 and 2020. But the Flip really surprised me this year, and that's because, in my opinion, this is the first foldable smartphone that appeals to the masses, coming in at under $1,000. We've got a really good display with 120Hz refresh rate, as well as a secondary cover display, which could be a little bit larger. And Samsung have somehow managed to give this an IPX8 water and dust resistant rating, which is still mind-blowing to me, that you can have a folding smartphone that can have water and dust resistance. Now, there is still some way to go for foldable devices. The battery life on the Flip 3 is really not that great. I've not had battery anxiety on a flagship smartphone for some time, but I did have with the Flip 3. And the cameras, although they're pretty good overall, they don't quite meet up to the competition. However, this is a big step for foldable smartphones, and it gets me really excited that these are now so much more accessible to a lot of people. Now, I have to give an honorable mention to the Folding King, the best smartphone that folds out into a tablet, and that is, of course, the Samsung Galaxy Z. I hate the name of it. The Fold 3, I'm just going to call it the Fold 3. The Fold 3, although might seem like a bit of an incremental update to the Fold 2, it's such a joy to use, with some beautiful displays both inside and out, really good battery life, software that's optimized to take advantage of the larger display, an IPX8 water and dust resistant rating like we've got on the Flip 3, and for the first time on a foldable, support for the S Pen. Something really important, especially considering that we did not have a Note device this year. Now, the Fold 3 still comes in at £1,600, which is pretty high, and that's the reason why it didn't quite make my top 5 list. Now, the final smartphone on my list, again, this is in no particular order, but this was so difficult to narrow it down, but I think it's gotta be the Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra. This was a smartphone that really tried to go all out, and although it's got the biggest camera bump on any smartphone that I've seen, It does have a purpose with a secondary display which you can use to take selfies from the rear-facing cameras. Arguably one of the best displays out there with 120 Hz and a 1700 nit peak brightness. A very premium ceramic build with 67 watt wired as well as 67 watt wireless charging, which I believe makes it one of the fastest wireless charging smartphones of this year. Now, it's not perfect, of course. The cameras didn't quite live up to my expectations, and although they're really good overall and have improved as well, I really don't like the fact that they've plastered 120x on the back when it's a 5x optical zoom camera, being stretched all the way to 120. I mean, definitely not a fan of that. But apart from that, it really does tick all of the boxes for a premium 2021 flagship smartphone. Now, I have to give an honorable mention to the Xiaomi 11T Pro as well, which came out a little bit later in the year. This is much more affordable, coming in at around £600 with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 chipset, 108 megapixel primary camera, and 120 watt charging included out of the box at that price. I mean, most of the smartphones on this list don't come with a charger included out of the box, so, you know, it's pretty impressive. So that is my top 5 list, but don't go anywhere yet, guys. As mentioned, there are lots of my favorites which just didn't quite make that top 5, but I think do deserve a mention. The first being the Oppo Find X3 Pro, which kind of got forgotten, I would say. It released very early in the year and it did tick off a lot of boxes. It's got an excellent display, some great cameras with the same sensor for the primary as well as the ultra-wide camera, and something that's completely unique to the Find X3 Pro, and that is the world's first microscope camera. Now, I'm gonna put my hands up. I initially did consider this a bit of a gimmick, but after using the Find X3 Pro, I found myself using the microscope camera more than the other cameras because it was just so much fun. We then have the OnePlus 9 Pro, which I think also deserves an honorable mention. This is very similar to the Find X3 Pro. It almost looks identical from the front because, you know, Oppo OnePlus. But the OnePlus 9 Pro is a really, really good smartphone. Comes in at a lower price compared to the Find X3 Pro and has a very fast and smooth software experience. Now, we did have the Hasselblad partnership, which did result in improvements for the cameras, but I do think it was a little bit too overhyped, and I think we'll be seeing the fruits of this partnership at a later point after a few generations. I also have to give an honorable mention to Realme. I mean, they released a lot of smartphones this year, maybe a bit too many, but the one that really stood out for me was the Realme GT. Realme seems to be taking the place of what OnePlus used to be, offering a flagship device with all of the flagship specs that you'd expect, but at a very competitive price point. The Realme GT has a 120Hz display, the Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 chipset, 65 watt charging included out of the box, and all of that started with an early bird offer of just €369. Now, sure, it's not going to live up in terms of the cameras to a lot of the $1,000 flagships out there, but realistically speaking, having those amazing specs at that low price makes it the ideal smartphone for spec junkies. Now, Sony also released some solid smartphones this year, but the one that really stood out for me was the Sony Xperia Pro I with a 1-inch sensor for the camera. They've gone full out on the hardware, and although the software processing from Sony may not be the traditional HDR look that you get from other smartphones, if you're somebody that's really into photography and video, having all of those manual controls with the amazing hardware is absolutely excellent. You've also got a 4K 120Hz display, and this is a really nice smartphone, which is still for the niches, I would say, and that's because it comes in at £1,600. Now, Vivo came out with some excellent smartphones this year as well. The X60 Pro, the X70 Pro, as well as the Pro Pluses. There's a lot of pros. But the X70 Pro Plus, excellent smartphone with some Zeiss optics. This is a smartphone that unfortunately I got a little bit late, so I didn't get a full chance to test. But Vivo are producing some excellent devices, and I'm really hoping that I can spend more time with Vivo smartphones in 2022. Asus released some great contenders. The Zenfone 8 was a bit of a surprise for me, although the design is pretty standard. It's, in my opinion, the best compact Android smartphone you can buy with no real compromises because of its size. You've still got the Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 chipset, you've got a 120Hz display, and you've also got a 3.5mm headphone jack. I mean, how many smartphones have one of those these days? This all comes in at a very competitive price point as well. And let's not forget the gaming monsters that we had this year. The Asus ROG Phone 5 Ultimate was a standout for me with its unique design, 144Hz display with 1 millisecond response time. It was the world's first smartphone with 18GB of LPDDR5 RAM, and it also has a massive 6000 mAh battery. Now, we also had the Lenovo Legion Phone Duel 2, which came in at a much lower price point, and this is more of a gaming device with a smartphone attached rather than a smartphone that can do gaming, and that's because it's kind of built landscape, and that includes the 44 megapixel live streaming pop-up camera, which is actually placed on the side. Lots of gaming triggers which you can customize, as well as dual turbo charging, which completely blew my mind. The fact that you can connect two cables to the smartphone at the same time and charge with them both, absolutely insane. And those are my top 5 smartphones of 2021, along with all of the honorable mentions. What are your favorite smartphones of 2021? Do you agree with my list? Do you disagree with it? Remember guys, we can still be friends. Drop your favorites in the comments below. And as mentioned, I will be revealing my daily drivers as well as all of my friends in the upcoming SuperSaf style collaboration video. You don't want to miss that. It's currently in the works and it'll be coming very, very soon. So make sure you have subscribed and hit that bell icon so you know as soon as it's live. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, then do smash that like button for me. Thanks for watching. This is Saf on SuperSaf TV, and I'll see you next time.